Welcome to the deep dive. I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you are holding a calculator in your hand.
Okay, an imaginary calculator. I like that.
Right. And I want you to start adding up every single minute you have ever spent, compromising in a relationship.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's going to be a big number.
Exactly. Just think about it seriously for a second. Tally up the time you spend managing your partner's emotions after a really long day, or biting your tongue to keep the peace during a tense car ride.
Or just the classic sprawling negotiation of whose family you're visiting for the holidays.
Yes. Or even just arguing over where to order dinner from. Just keep hitting the plus button on that calculator and add it all up.
When you really look at that running total, I mean, the final number on that screen might actually shock you.
Yeah.
We casually brush off those moments as the normal give and take of daily life.
Right, just normal relationship stuff.
Exactly. But when you aggregate it, you are looking at a massive, almost staggering amount of your finite time on this earth.
And when you look at that massive number, our mission today starts to make a lot of sense. We're going to explore what happens when someone looks at that exact time drain and decides that this friction is actually the ultimate disruption of human potential.
It is a wild perspective.
It really is. Today, we are unpacking a singular, highly provocative essay from February 2023. It was written by an author named Su Fuang and edited by Kinyu. And the title alone basically tells you exactly the kind of territory we're walking into.
It definitely doesn't pull any punches.
No, it does not. The title is "The Biggest Internal Friction in Life is in the Relationship Between Husband and Wife."
The premise is undeniably bold. I mean, the essay itself is a fascinating intellectual journey because it takes these incredibly common, everyday domestic frustrations.
The kind of things comedians joke about, right?
Yeah, exactly. The stuff couples bicker over in grocery stores. And it escalates them into this sweeping, radical philosophical and societal critique.
Now, before we jump into the deep end of this text, I do need to establish a very clear baseline for you, the listener.
Definitely necessary here.
Yeah. This source material contains some highly unconventional, arguably very radical views on marriage, family, and how society as a whole should be structured.
Very radical.
So our job here is not to take sides. We are absolutely not endorsing the author's viewpoints, nor are we here to attack or debunk them. Our role as your guides through this material is purely to impartially report, analyze, and unpack the ideas exactly as they are presented in the original text.
We just want to understand the architecture of this author's argument.
Right. And understand the architecture of his ultimate radical solution, we first have to examine his critique of the traditional status quo.
Yeah, he doesn't just wake up and decide to attack the concept of marriage in a vacuum. He meticulously targets the entire societal apparatus that keeps the institution of marriage propped up as, like, the gold standard of human existence.
Because society heavily protects marriage, right? And the author maps out exactly how this happens across all these different domains.
He does. He points out that moralists spend their entire careers praising the virtues of matrimony. Sociologists write endless, sprawling articles and books on how to maintain it and why it matters.
And governments, too. I mean, they don't just protect it with tax breaks and legal frameworks. They view the marital unit as the absolute load-bearing cornerstone of social stability.
Right. He even notes that governments will actively crack down on speech or actions or movements that threaten to undermine the traditional institution of the family.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's like viewing marriage as a high-maintenance vintage car.
Well, I like that analogy.
Right. So society tells us this vintage car is the ultimate status symbol, the one thing you absolutely must have parked in your driveway to be considered a successful, complete, respectable adult.
Yeah, you haven't made it until you have the car.
Exactly. But the author is essentially walking past your driveway and saying, look at you. You're spending all your weekends in the garage covered in grease, constantly ordering expensive parts, bleeding your wallet dry, just trying to keep the engine from completely stalling out.
You're spending all your energy maintaining the car instead of actually driving anywhere.
Exactly.
The vintage car is a brilliant way to conceptualize his core thesis. He argues that marriage is undeniably the most time-consuming and energy-consuming relationship in the entire spectrum of human interaction.
Because it just demands so much.
Right, and because it demands such a relentless, exhausting level of daily maintenance, it actively prevents people from realizing their full creative and personal potential. The maintenance becomes the entire point of the exercise, rather than a vehicle to move you forward.
Now, to be fair to his argument, he does offer a concession early on in the text. He isn't claiming that love doesn't exist at all.
No, he says he doesn't doubt that happy marriages can and do exist in the world.
He even admits this kind of personal longing for that classic romantic ideal. The childhood sweethearts who grow old together, completely in sync, loving each other for a lifetime, staying together peacefully for generations.
But, and this is a big but, he compares finding a flawless marriage like that to finding ironclad orchids growing on trees.
Ironclad orchids, that is such a specific image.
It is, and that specific metaphor is doing a lot of heavy lifting for his argument. An ironclad orchid growing wild on a tree is something impossibly rare. It is almost mythical in its perfection and beauty.
So he's saying it's basically a unicorn.
Pretty much. He is conceding that, yes, the ideal exists somewhere in nature. But human history and practical experience over thousands of years show us that for the vast, vast majority of everyday people, the reality is not a pristine orchid.
The reality is exhaustion.
Exactly.
And because he views these ideal orchid-like marriages as statistical myths, he entirely stops looking at relationships through the lens of romance or emotion. He pivots to this very cold, almost Marxist-sounding economic lens.
Yeah, he starts analyzing human relationships purely in terms of productive forces.
Which is such a pivot from talking about childhood sweethearts.
It really is. This is where his argument takes on a highly structural, philosophical tone. He builds a strict hierarchy of productivity to explain exactly how marriage destroys human potential.
Okay, break that down for us.
So in his framework, the first productive force in the universe is what he calls the greatest creator. This essentially translates to the regenerative capacity of natural resources, the raw, unfiltered natural world.
Like the environment, the changing of the seasons, weather patterns, the raw materials we extract from the earth.
Precisely. He argues that without this foundational first productive force, human capability is entirely meaningless. It's just a dead end.
Right, because we need a world to operate in.
Exactly. His example is incredibly simple, but philosophically undeniable. He says, what if there is no rain? It doesn't matter how intelligent, innovative, or hardworking a farmer might be. Without the greatest creator providing the basic element of rain, human effort yields zero crop.
So nature is the ultimate non-negotiable baseline of all productivity.
Yes. And once that baseline is established, he introduces the second productive force. That is us.
Human beings.
Right. Human beings and our capacity for innovation, labor, and creation.
And what's fascinating here is how he weaponizes this dry economic language to completely reframe the concept of emotional labor.
Oh, absolutely. Normally, in modern psychology or just everyday conversation, we view the effort we put into a relationship as a romantic necessity. We see it as an act of love, a building block of empathy, or simply the basic cost of admission for meaningful human connection.
But the author strips all that sentimentality away.
Completely. He argues that when a human being's production capacity is consumed by non-creative matters, specifically the endless cycle of maintaining interpersonal relationships, it represents the greatest possible repression and destruction of productivity.
You are taking the second greatest force in the universe and wasting it on domestic friction.
Yeah. He actually issues a direct challenge to the reader at this point in the essay. He says, if you have been married for more than 10 years, take out that imaginary calculator we talked about at the beginning of the show.
Bring it back out.
Right. Look at a standard 24-hour day. How much of that time is actually spent on true innovation? How many hours are dedicated to creation, to pushing the boundaries of your intellectual potential, or contributing something novel to the world? And his conclusion for the reader is pretty bleak. He says almost none of it.
Wow.
Yeah. He argues that the overwhelming bulk of your daily cognitive load is quietly being siphoned off to maintain the spiritual and emotional realms of the relationship. He uses incredibly strong, evocative language to describe this state, claiming that married people are firmly held hostage by their union.
Held hostage, that's heavy.
They're captives to another person's emotional baseline.
See, I have to pause here and push back on his foundational premise.
Let's hear it.
The author seems to assume that all relationship time is a strict zero-sum game. He's arguing that if you spend an hour comforting your spouse after a bad day, that is one less hour you have available to invent a new technology, write a novel, or build a business.
Right.
But doesn't emotional support in a marriage actually serve as the fuel for some people's creativity? I mean, in psychology, there is the concept of a secure attachment. Knowing you have a safe harbor, someone who undeniably has your back. For many innovators and creators, that emotional maintenance doesn't cancel out their drive. It provides the very psychological safety net that allows them to take massive creative risks in the first place.
Yeah, the secure attachment theory is the ultimate counterweight to his argument. When humans feel deeply safe and supported, our nervous systems regulate, and we are actually far more likely to explore, innovate, and create.
Exactly.
But the author rejects that dynamic entirely. For him, the energy expenditure of simply coexisting with another complex human being, managing their needs, their shifting moods, their physical demands, is always a net negative.
So where modern psychology sees a secure launch pad, he only sees a heavy, rusted anchor dragging down the ship.
Perfectly said. And to prove just how heavy that anchor really is, he moves away from these sweeping, abstract theories of productive forces and gets incredibly granular.
Oh, he really gets into the weeds here.
He wants to show you the math. He starts listing highly specific, everyday examples of lost freedoms, claiming that the very moment you enter a marriage, you instantly forfeit half of your personal freedom.
And he escalates the language again, doesn't he? Comparing married individuals to slaves who systematically lack the mental, physical, and material freedom required to truly innovate?
It is intense, jarring terminology, but he grounds it by looking at the exhausting baseline of basic human existence. He points out that just maintaining basic survival is a massive undertaking.
Oh, for sure.
Paying for food, keeping yourself clothed, securing a roof over your head, figuring out your daily commute, and dealing with the inevitable realities of aging and bodily sickness, that alone exhausts a human being's energy reserves. The baseline of staying alive is already a heavy lift.
Right, and adding another person's baseline survival and emotional needs on top of your own is, in his view, what breaks the camel's back.
Yeah.
Here's where it gets really interesting because he starts listing out these specific grievances to prove his point. And they are so remarkably specific and relatable that you can almost feel his personal frustration bleeding right through the text.
You really can.
He asks the reader directly, as a married person, do you even have the right to freely dispose of your own income? Can you simply eat what you want, when you want, without considering someone else's palate?
Can you choose where to travel for the holidays or decide to travel entirely alone
Right.
without it devolving into a massive multi-day negotiation?
Right. And he considers those the tangible, calculable drawbacks of a shared life. But then he zooms in even closer. He asks the reader to examine the micro concessions of daily life that we barely even notice anymore.
The micro-compromises are arguably the most compelling part of the essay because they are just so visceral.
They really hit home.
He asks, do you have the right to talk to the opposite sex late at night about grand ideas? Can you frequently go drink tea with former classmates of the opposite sex without it triggering jealousy or requiring a lengthy explanation?
Oh man, the tea with classmates.
Right. And then he says, if a sudden burst of creative inspiration strikes you at midnight, can you just flip on the bright lights in the bedroom and start hammering away loudly on your keyboard?
Notice the brilliant way he frames that specific scenario, though. He focuses entirely on the friction between sudden, raw, creative inspiration, the midnight typing, and the basic biological comfort of a spouse who is just trying to get some sleep.
Yeah, we have all lived some version of that moment.
Yeah.
You wake up wanting to turn on the light to read a book, or you get annoyed because a partner is tossing and turning or making noise while you are trying to sleep.
We frame that as basic domestic courtesy. We creep around in the dark because we care about the other person.
Exactly.
But the author elevates that standard everyday courtesy to a literal blockade on human progress. He is essentially saying, you didn't write the next great novel or invent a world-changing algorithm because you were too afraid of waking up your wife with the clacking of your keyboard.
And he pushes that logic even further into the purely emotional realm. He asks, when your spouse is in a terrible mood, do you dare to say the word no to them? When they fall ill, do you genuinely have the freedom to refuse to take care of them without facing severe relational consequences?
Now, most listeners would immediately react to that by saying, well, obviously you shouldn't refuse to take care of your sick spouse. That is just the baseline of being a decent human being.
Right. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the author's underlying logic is that being a decent human being within the confines of a traditional marriage requires the constant draining micromanagement of another person's physical and emotional state. When you take the already heavy burden of basic biological survival and fuse it with the endless daily emotional negotiations of a marriage, you completely strip away the mental runway required for true, unbridled creativity. Every ounce of your surplus energy is diverted toward managing friction.
And that is exactly why he labels this the biggest internal conflict a person will face in their lifetime.
Yeah.
So, the author has meticulously painted this grim picture of marriage as a soul-crushing, time-draining hostage situation where your creativity is stifled by something as simple as not being able to type at midnight. We clearly understand the mechanics of his critique.
We definitely do.
But he isn't just writing this essay to vent about domestic life. He firmly believes the entire societal system is structurally broken, and because of that, he pivots to pitching a wildly radical alternative.
He does.
He isn't just suggesting that people should stay single and live alone. He's advocating for a complete structural overhaul of how the human race lives.
He begins this pivot by attacking the deeply ingrained societal constraint that dictates the trajectory of our lives. He points to the unspoken rule, upon growing up, every male should take a wife and every female should take a husband.
Right.
He argues that this isn't a biological imperative. It is simply a constraint of human thinking. It is an artificial trap that prevents society from realizing that life could be organized in a vastly superior way.
And to shatter this deeply entrenched mindset, he brings in a religious justification, which is a truly fascinating rhetorical strategy.
It really is.
Out of nowhere, he quotes Jesus Christ, stating, "In heaven they neither marry nor are given in marriage." He wields this theology to suggest that the ultimate divine state of human existence, the absolute pinnacle of spiritual peace, is entirely free from the earthly institution of marriage.
By quoting Jesus, he is trying to dismantle a conservative, tradition-bound social institution using the very religious texts that often uphold it. It's a very clever move.
It is, but he isn't suggesting that people simply suffer through their earthly marriages and wait for the peace of heaven. He proposes a concrete earthly solution, a highly organized alternative communal living structure.
Yes. He introduces the concept of the second home, which was supposedly created by an organization or movement he refers to as a Lifechanyuan.
Lifechanyuan.
Right. He claims that they have been actively experimenting with this second home model on Earth for over 10 years. And he doesn't just say it's going well. He boasts that it is a 100% successful sociological experiment.
100%.
100%. He states with absolute confidence that daily life in this specific community is 10 times better than life inside a traditional marriage.
Okay, if you are listening to this right now, your brain is probably flooding with a million logistical questions. I know mine is.
Oh, absolutely.
If nobody in this community is married, and everyone is just living together in this utopian structure, how does the machinery of daily life actually function?
Right.
The author knows his audience is skeptical, so he lists out the immediate FAQs. Who is doing the daily housework? Can people in this community still choose to have children? What does freedom and relationships between men and women actually look like in practice?
And most importantly, what happens to people when they get severely sick or when they inevitably get old and need care? Well, his answer to all of these incredibly complex, historically insurmountable logistical nightmares of human existence is essentially, we already handled it.
Wow.
Yeah. He claims that he has deeply considered all these vulnerabilities and that the Lifechanyuan second home possesses a perfect program specifically designed to solve every single one of those issues seamlessly.
So what does this all mean? I mean, the author is promising a literal utopia on Earth. He is claiming they have permanently solved the friction of daily chores, the massive burden of childcare, the complexities of elder care, and the terror of healthcare.
The very survival baselines that he spent the first half of the essay arguing exhaust a human being's capacity to live fully.
Right. But here is the massive catch. He offers absolutely zero operational details in this text on how they actually achieve this perfection.
Anything at all.
He simply assures you that the perfect program exists. It is a massive gaping cliffhanger designed to hook the reader's curiosity.
And this raises an important question about the rhetorical architecture of the entire essay. Think about the incredible shift in tone we just experienced.
It's quite a leap.
The author starts by brilliantly tapping into incredibly common, universal frustrations that almost everyone has felt. The minor annoyance of compromising on a holiday destination, the quiet resentment of creeping around a dark bedroom, the sheer exhaustion of managing a partner's bad mood after a long day.
Yeah, he gets the reader nodding along, thinking, yes, he's right. Managing a relationship really can be a massive drain on my energy sometimes.
And then he uses that exact relatable on-ramp to pitch a highly radical, utopian communal lifestyle. He leverages the mundane exhaustion of modern life to sell an extreme structural escape hatch.
His final pitch to the reader is almost cinematic in its delivery. Having diagnosed the disease of internal friction and teased the cure of the second home, he tells the reader, stop chasing money. Stop chasing societal status. Stop getting married and pouring your finite life energy into maintaining these exhausting special relationships.
Just leave it all behind and go to the second home.
Yeah. He promises that if you do this, you will be, in his exact words, moved to tears in the end.
It is a deeply powerful emotional appeal. He isn't just offering a new living arrangement. He is offering a complete psychological and physical escape from the relentless friction of modern human existence.
As we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to bring the focus back directly to you, the listener. We have traced this author's argument from the exhausting, calculable minutes of daily marital compromises through a Marxist-style analysis of productive forces, all the way to a theological and utopian pitch for a communal second home.
It's been quite a ride.
It has. Now, even if you are not currently rushing to pack your bags, abandon your life, and move to Lifechanyuan, this text forces a really fascinating personal audit of your own life.
It demands that you look at the closest relationships in your life with a very cold, analytical, and honest eye.
Are the relationships in your life currently acting as a catalyst for your potential? Do they provide you with that secure base, the emotional safety net you need to innovate, take risks, and create? Or, if you are being brutally honest with that imaginary calculator we started the show with, are they functioning as an unseen energy drain?
Are they a constant source of internal friction that keeps you stuck in the garage, endlessly tinkering with the engine
Yeah.
instead of driving your life forward?
Right.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Something that builds on the author's underlying premise, but looks toward the very near future.
Okay, let's hear it.
The author firmly believes that the deadly combination of our basic survival needs, working to pay for food, cleaning the house, caring for the sick, when combined with the relentless emotional maintenance of a marriage, is what ultimately destroys our creative freedom. But let's look at the rapid current trajectory of technology. What happens if, in the near future, artificial intelligence and advanced robotics actually manage to automate all of those basic survival needs?
Oh, wow. Like if the robots are doing the daily housework, cooking the meals, and managing the logistics of the household.
Yes. If that sheer, exhausting baseline of physical survival is entirely removed from our plates by technology, would the internal friction of marriage finally disappear? Would couples suddenly find themselves with all this freed up energy and bandwidth to just purely innovate and create exactly as the author desires? Or, with all that free time and absolutely no mundane chores left to argue over, would humans suddenly realize that navigating this messy, emotional, interpersonal friction was actually the main purpose of human connection all along?
That is wild to think about.
If the struggle for daily survival ends, does the relationship finally bloom effortlessly, like that rare ironclad orchid? Or do we discover that we actually need the friction of compromise just to feel human?
That is a phenomenal question to end on. Does the friction break our potential, or is the friction the very thing that makes us human? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking the hard questions, keep challenging the status quo of your own life, and we will catch you next time.